You ever wake up to find two strange trucks parked inside your own garage? Because that's exactly what happened to me last Thursday, and no, this isn't one of those exaggerated internet stories. This actually happened, but the wildest part, it wasn't even me who discovered it. It was my grandpa, and let me tell you, the man might be nearly 80, but when it comes to justice, he's sharper than any lawyer you'll ever meet. I was out of town for 2 days helping my sister move into her new apartment. Before leaving, I made sure the house was locked up, alarm set, garage doors shut, and everything was good to go. Grandpa had agreed to stay over just to keep an eye on the place, mostly because I've got 2 goofy golden retrievers who need to be fed, walked, and occasionally kept from eating my shoes. Grandpa likes staying at my place because it's quiet, clean, and I've got a better cable package than he does. Everything should have been smooth sailing, until I get this call from him at 8:03 in the morning. "Hey," he says, calm as ever. "Quick question, you expecting 2 trucks in your garage?" I blinked. "What? 2 Ford pickups, silver and red, sitting right in your garage?" I just opened the door to grab my hammer and nearly had a heart attack. I sat up in my hotel bed, totally thrown off. "Grandpa, I don't even own 1 truck. Who the hell parked in there?" "That's what I'd like to know," he replied. "Because I checked the security footage, and you're not gonna believe who I saw." That's when he told me, HOA Karen, real name's Karen Maddox, but everyone just calls her HOA Karen because she lives for rules, meetings, and passive-aggressive emails. She's the kind of person who once fined a neighbor for having a garden gnome 2 inches taller than approved height, I kid you not. So Grandpa pulls up the footage on my living room TV. There she is, broad daylight, standing in front of my garage with 2 guys probably hired help using some kind of long metal tool to manually pop open the garage door. They wrestle with it a bit, and boom, it's open. She actually steps inside like she owns the place and directs the 2 guys to park the trucks neatly inside both bays of my garage. Then she closes it up and walks off like nothing happened. I was in disbelief. She really just broke into my garage. "Yup," Grandpa said. "She let herself right in like it was her God-given right." I started pacing around the hotel room. Why would she even do that? What's the reason? Grandpa had already gotten the full scoop. Turns out Karen was throwing an engagement party for her daughter that weekend. You know, one of those big, over-the-top suburban events with white tents, catered food, and Instagram photographers. Apparently, she didn't want her front yard cluttered with vehicles. She wanted everything to look perfect for the pictures. So she got it into her head that since I wasn't home, she could borrow my garage for the trucks. According to one of the workers who Grandpa actually questioned, she told them I was totally fine with it. Totally fine with it. I said, "She doesn't even like me." "Doesn't matter," Grandpa said. "She crossed a line. This is trespassing. And maybe theft if you count the use of private property." "I'm calling the cops," I said, but Grandpa stopped me. "No, not yet." I paused. "What do you mean?" "I got a better idea," he said, voice dropping into that mischievous tone he used when I was a kid and he was about to outsmart a door-to-door scammer. That's when the real plan started forming. Grandpa waited. He sat by the window with his morning coffee, watching the house across the street. Sure enough, an hour later, Karen came strolling back across the street in her heels and designer sunglasses. She opened the garage door using the external keypad, which, let's be clear, shouldn't have worked unless she had guessed my code or hacked it somehow, and walked inside to check on something in one of the truck beds. As soon as she stepped in and reached into the back of the red pickup, Grandpa made his move. He hit the garage door remote. Both doors slammed shut. Karen jumped and spun around. She tried the side door locked. She banged on the garage door like it owed her money, but Grandpa was already standing in the driveway with his arms crossed and the phone in his hand. From the inside, her voice was muffled but furious. "Let me out, you can't trap me in here. I'm the HOA president." Grandpa didn't flinch. He spoke through the door like he was teaching Sunday school. "This is private property, ma'am. You broke into it, and you're gonna answer for it." "I had permission," she yelled. "You most definitely did not." That's when Grandpa called me again, just to keep me updated. "I've got her locked in," he said casually, like he was talking about a raccoon in a shed. "What's she doing now?" "Yelling, sweating, trying to call someone." "I already called the sheriff. Should be here soon." The image of Karen pacing around in my garage like a caged bird was almost enough to make me forget how furious I was. Almost within 15 minutes, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up. Grandpa showed them the footage. They knocked politely on the garage door, opened it, and greeted Karen like they already knew her, which, as it turns out, they did. She'd called law enforcement multiple times over petty HOA issues, and they weren't exactly fans. Karen tried to spin a tale about how it was all a misunderstanding, that I told her she could use the space, that she was doing what was best for the community. Grandpa shut that down fast. My grandson hasn't even been in the state, and we've got video of you breaking and entering. That was all it took. They placed her under arrest for trespassing, unlawful entry, and a few other charges I can't remember the names of. The trucks were towed. The engagement party. It still happened, but guests had to walk 2 blocks from wherever they could find parking. Karen's daughter looked so embarrassed when the cops showed up at her house. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. And as Grandpa stood there, watching the chaos unfold with a quiet grin, I realized something. He wasn't just watching my house. He was guarding justice with a remote in one hand and the truth in the other. The moment the deputies swung the garage door open and Karen stepped out, you could tell she was trying to pull herself together. Her face was flushed, her hair was frazzled, and she had that tight, fake smile that screamed, "I'm about to lie through my teeth." She smoothed out her blouse and immediately launched into a speech that sounded way too rehearsed. "Officers, I'm so sorry for the confusion. This is all just a big misunderstanding. I know the homeowner, he's out of town, and he said I could use the garage for a couple of days for storage. That's all this is. I was just trying to make sure everything was safe." One of the deputies glanced at Grandpa, who just raised an eyebrow and handed over a flash drive. "Here's the footage from the security cameras. Shows her breaking into the garage, directing 2 guys to park the trucks, and then walking off like it was her property." Karen's fake smile faltered a little. "I didn't break in, I had the code." "Ma'am," the younger deputy said, "having a code doesn't make it legal unless you had explicit permission from the owner." She tried a new angle. "Well, I'm the HOA president, and I have certain rights to manage community space." At that, both deputies actually laughed. "This isn't community space," the older one said. "It's a privately owned garage on a deeded single-family property. HOA or not, you can't just walk in and use it like it's a public park." Karen's face twisted with frustration. "Do you even understand the kind of image I have to maintain? There's an engagement party today, my daughter's party. What was I supposed to do? Let trucks ruin our pictures?" Grandpa didn't miss a beat. "You were supposed to not commit a crime. That's what—" The officers started taking notes, asking Grandpa more questions while Karen stood there fuming. I could hear the voices through the phone as Grandpa kept me on the line. I wasn't saying anything, just listening in. Karen kept trying to interrupt, throwing out excuses, blaming the workers, saying it was all a communication breakdown. But the footage spoke for itself. There was no permission, no miscommunication, just entitlement wrapped in HOA self-importance. Eventually, the deputies told her they'd be pressing charges: trespassing, unauthorized entry, misuse of private property, and depending on how far I wanted to take it, possibly even attempted theft or damage if they found any issues with the garage or equipment inside. That's when she snapped. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice pitching up like a teak. "I'll have you know I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I built the HOA. I've written the rules. And you just broke several laws," the younger deputy said calmly, pulling out his cuffs. "Turn around, please." The sight of her getting cuffed in my driveway was something I'll never forget. A few neighbors had already started peeking from their windows. One guy 2 doors down stepped out with a mug of coffee and just leaned on his fence like he was watching live theater. Karen's face was red with fury and humiliation. She tried to look composed, but there's no dignity in being walked to a police cruiser in handcuffs, especially not when you're wearing a pearl necklace and platform heels. Grandpa stayed outside until they drove her off. The trucks were towed shortly after. The workers Karen had hired didn't even stick around to help. They just walked off quietly when they saw how things were going down. Probably didn't want to get dragged into anything. Later that afternoon, her daughter's party still happened, but with none of the elegance Karen had planned. No one could park close by. Guests were asking why the host's mother wasn't around, and of course, word travels fast in neighborhoods like ours. By the end of the night, everyone knew the story, complete with details, video footage, and the cherry on top, Grandpa's dramatic garage door trap. Now here's where things got even better. The following Monday, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. Karen had been suspended indefinitely pending investigation, but by the end of the vote, she was completely removed. Seems like people had been waiting for a reason to bring her down. Apparently, this wasn't her first overstep. One board member even said she'd secretly changed meeting times to keep others from attending. Another neighbor claimed she tried to fine him for building a treehouse visible from the sidewalk. And here's the kicker. They decided to officially reprimand her and release a public statement denouncing her actions, stating clearly that HOA rules do not override private property rights and that no officer, no matter their position, has the authority to commandeer someone's home, garage, or yard. Her daughter ended up issuing a kind of apology in a community group post, basically distancing herself from the whole incident. Can't really blame her, to be honest. For Grandpa, well, let's just say he became a bit of a local legend. Few days after the whole fiasco, some neighbors left him cookies and a handwritten card that said, "Thanks for protecting the neighborhood from tyranny HOA style." Someone even edited a screenshot from the security footage and made a meme out of it. Karen mid-scream inside the garage, with the caption, *access denied, Grandpa edition. That one made it to the local Facebook group and got over 400 likes. One of the newer residents, a retired teacher, suggested the HOA do something symbolic. So they voted to name the old community park bench near the walking trail Jack's Justice seat, after Grandpa. A little plaque was installed. Grandpa didn't want a big ceremony or anything, but he did walk over and sit on the bench the first morning it was renamed. Just sat there with his coffee and a grin on his face like he'd won the quietest war in suburbia. He didn't need recognition, he just believed in doing the right thing. That was always his style. Not loud, not flashy, just steady, calm, and with absolutely zero tolerance for people who thought the rules only applied to everyone else. I came home later that week, and we both stood in the garage for a moment, just looking around. Everything was fine, no damage, the trucks were gone, the keypad was disabled, but there was still this heavy silence in the air, like the echo of what had happened still lingered in the concrete. Grandpa finally said, "You might want to change that code." "Already did," I replied, and added 2 security cameras. He nodded. "Good. You never know who will think they own what's not theirs." He was right, and that's the thing about people like Karen. They confuse control with ownership. They think if they speak the loudest, they get to rewrite the rules. But all it takes is one moment, one calm old man with a garage remote and a firm sense of right and wrong to remind them where the real boundaries are. And in this case, those boundaries were made of steel, locked shut, and backed by the law.